So this is a little bit of context around the work that we're doing regarding decentralized data stewardship. And it's Michelle Hertzfeld. I'm going to ask you to hop on towards the end just to introduce you. So this is providing a little bit of the thinking context around work we're doing with, for example, Data Together, our work around IPFS for large volumes, work with IPFS cluster, pinning services, allow lists, block lists, all of those things fit together under this heading of decentralized data stewardship. And this is a 20-minute talk that I'm condensing down to 5, so we'll see how I do for time. So when we talk about this decentralized web stuff, often we're talking about network topologies, and there's this other aspect of decentralization of asking who can actually hold the data, who can actually possess the data that they're relying on or that they've created, and how do we extract the data that we've created in these centralized systems and take it into our own possession? What does that look like? How do we do that? And the point that I've been making a lot within the institutions like libraries and archives is that the decentralized web is still forming. And so if people want this new version of the web to be built in a way that goes deeper than profit motives, that is built around structures and patterns that go deeper than profit motives, those organizations need to step up and actually build themselves in this new web. So what does that look like? I often point to this idea of libraries, asking the question, why did we create libraries in the first place? That libraries worked really well for print publications. It was a place where if you had information that you want to be available to your whole community, you could put it into the holdings of the library or nominate it for the library to put in their holdings, and then that library exists to make it available for everyone. But when the web came along, we all dropped the ball on that because we thought the web would make information ubiquitous, because we thought the web was like a library, because you can use a library or the web to find and access information. But libraries are actually a means of sharing possession of information, which the web is not. And so that's where we need to reincorporate how do we share possession of information resources, particularly digital information. And this is where location addressing versus content addressing becomes so central. This is why IPFS is so important for decentralized data stewardship, is because with a location addressed approach, every time you make a copy, it becomes actually a distinct information resource. It is a different thing in the view of a location addressed web. And so they end up competing with each other rather than reinforcing each other. And when you consider the economics of that, of whoever controls the central, one of those locations, if they become the location that you go to find or create information, they control the machinery of communication, which means that any of the work that you do of creating information in that system it's labor that you're putting into that system. The product of that labor ends up defaulting to being the property of whoever runs that machinery. And so that looks a whole lot like wage labor. Great examples, SoundCloud. There are people freaked out when they're worried that SoundCloud is going to be shut down. Twitter shutting down Vine, and people sort of mourning the loss of Vine using location address links pointing to a system that they know is being shut down. And so this whole situation of competing to be the location, it looks a lot like colonialism, the people who have the power and the resources carving up a constrained resource to own their little pieces of it. And this also reaches into our personal lives when we're sharing information about people dying, like major events in your life. All those things are becoming, those records of our lives and our culture are becoming the property of those central parties who, and this is where the parallel to colonialism becomes relevant, or especially relevant, because we also have examples of how to undo that. And this is where Gandhi, in resisting the British Empire's rule of India, used this principle of Swadeshi, or self-sufficiency. And this is the example of building your own spinning wheel and spinning your own cotton to make your own clothes, rather than relying on a machinery that exported that cotton to another country, produced it, and then sold it back to you. And so we need ways to possess and exchange the information we rely on individually and collectively. And so that the information should be held by the people who rely on it. that communities and institutions should be aggregating that information and the resources to possess that information so that it can be accessible, so that it's discoverable, and so that it can be preserved for the long term. So that's where we get back to this idea of sharing possession of information resources. Do I really have more than a minute left? Or I'm at time? Okay. All right. Yeah, new patterns around all of that. We've been in this collaboration called Data Together, which is specifically sort of spelling out the model there. And we've recently just hired Michelle Hertzfeld to be leading decentralized data stewardship for all these activities. So thank you, and watch for a whole lot more in that domain.